ESG score is negative compared to the regular bonds. So carbon emission or intensity are dependent variable, control variables here. So we can see that they have a worse result, green bonds, right? So their carbon emission usually not good. Outcome is not good. Other carbon intensity was also negative. So green bond does not perform better than traditional bonds in carbon emission, scope 1, 2, 3, and intensity 2. Whether the story is consistent with your expectation or beyond your expectation. I feel that the story actually beyond my expectation. I expect maybe good. Green bond usually maybe align with the carbon emission should be lower. So maybe this belongs to endogeneity problem because I have a worse carbon emission measures. So I was motivated to issue green bonds. So this is the carbon emission of the results. And on the other hand, we can say that after using green bonds, actually our carbon emission improve. And my motive is to improve our carbon emission. If your motivation is to improve, it may align with your expectation because we pick the carbon emission 1 to 3 is significantly reduced. But if this is a control variable, why you issue green bonds? Because I want to reduce our carbon emission. This is another motivation. So matching sample, we have a very regular bonds and green bonds. You can see the difference between two groups are significantly in difference. So this is the very good reason that we can match in both of them. Belong to this and belong to that. The matching sample. These are those bonds characteristic. These are those liquidity measures. So they have a significant difference in liquidity measures. However, no significant difference between the characteristic of the bonds. Even though they have difference, right? Maturity is shorter, but it is insignificant. Coupon is lower, but it is insignificant. Default, no significance. Rating, green bonds is a higher number being rated, but it is also insignificant. So what's the story for this? Green bonds, regular bonds, in the characteristics, they have no significance, even though they have difference, right? They have difference, but not significantly different. One reason I can say that, because of observation. When observation is very small, no larger than 200, it's very difficult to get a significance. If we read the data, we assume that there's significance different. However, it is not. We have difference, but not significance. The significance only happened in liquidity. 3 star here, t-value. Liquidity. So we can go back to here, come back to check whether we totally understand. And the investment type is the key of the paper. Also, there have some difference. Individual green bonds, the percent is higher than regular investor. This is a company. Okay, so this is an individual company abroad, compare. Get to the same meaning because the sample is very small, only like 10 to 9, 0 to 1, you know. Even though there have some difference, but won't be significant because some cell doesn't match the standard that the large sample can say something. The story is not very, very strong. And investment in investor sectors, non-individual, and we can see is focused on who will be the green bonds. Here is a large portion. Foreign and non-finance enterprises. Regular will focus on bank and the non-finance enterprise and also foreign. They have different investor type. Okay, so answer these questions after take a look at the oldest table. Which one? Who invests more in green bonds according to the paper? We already had the results. Show the results here. Individual, company, Norway, and foreign, non-foreign, domestic. It's multiple choice, but the best answer is only one. Others could be possible, but which one will be the best answer? Okay, so our answers are very consistent so far, and it is correct. According to the paper, who invests more? Beyond our expectation, that's a smaller investor, and most of them are individuals. The ratio is high. So very special characteristic for this investor. Large investor, institutional investor, also has the portion is lower for green bonds because it's a lower return. Lower return, and also higher risk. So this is the very inconsistent goal with the institutional investor. So investor takeaway, we can see that green bond default rate are higher. So green investors' portfolio have higher default rate. And green investors hold riskier and more volatile portfolio. And green bonds investors are smaller, more retail, and more local. Bank and insurance company actually less involved. So this is very surprising compared to American data because they're given their credit expertise. They are not green, major in green, so they don't participate that much. And again, investor preference doesn't align with the rotate into greener firms. Instead of hold oil and high emission issuers. So why this matter? So we can learn that green bonds investing is not driven by stereotype. Like I invest only in clean firms. Instead, they are driven by a belief that dirty firms can improve. So this is a belief to affect the behavior that the individual of the smoke pollution would like to purchase that because they believe that the dirty firm can improve something. They are not really like to get this result because they just have a strong belief to affect that behavior. The dirty firms can improve. So from all the conclusions, and they find a very consistent story about the ratios compared with the green and the regular. Okay, so this could be a very interesting data. Which one would you prefer to know more? See, that is a hierarchy, only happening here, right? 3-star. Local government investor, actually green bonds, higher investor. Others have some difference, but not significant. So government have their policy. And insurance characteristic, we can have some difference too. Even though green bonds or green investor, they have a lower percentage of security with score, lower disclosure, okay? But their social score is lower too. Environmental score is pretty similar. Okay, so this paper has some problem about the inconsistent data. You know, sometimes they're using matching sample, but sometimes it is not. So you will have to integrate the story and the table. They're doing this, they're doing that. Some matching sample, but some of them are not come from the matching sample. Because if the matching sample only 100 more, or 70 more, 94, but this is more than that. The same results came from excluding the matching sample. If we don't include the match, whether our result will dominate by those matching sample, and find a very similar story. So takeaway about the corporate impact. Usually green bonds start with a higher CO2 emission penalty, but exposure to green bond investor predict marginal CO2 improvement. So we can see the lower coefficient significantly. Investors are not selected already clean firms, right? We see the result. They are choosing transition candidate. So they believe that dirty firm can improve, but they're not select the very clean firms first. So these results support the consequentially the motive, not Warren's law. So this is a very special motive. I'm not picking the clean firms. I'm picking the sample, which is the candidate that have potential to improve the dirty pollution. That's my target. I only want to do this. So this matter is because this align with the idea that investors want to influence the future behavior, not reward the current goodness. Okay, they have the very special characteristic. I give you lower return because I want to do something for those polluters to encourage them to improve their dirtiness. Okay, so all this belong to different portfolio to check the different type of portfolio risk, volatility, portfolio volatility. We can see that green is much higher, right? And you can see the significance are significantly different. Green investor also have a portfolio volatility, which is much higher than regular investor. Difference is significant. So green bonds, green investors have a higher volatility, higher risk, and a lower coupon, lower yield to maturity. How green they are. Could they be institutional investor? I don't think so. So many states actually start to anti the ESG funds because they cannot make much more reward. So volatility, as a result, we can see green is positive, and default is higher, also green, right? Default rate is much higher. And the same result, very consistent. Default rate is much higher. So we have some conclusions. Compared with the green bond investor and ESG theory, we can find that green bonds significantly different from conventional bonds regarding the purpose and the investor motivation. They are very special category. And actually, the result contrasts the real world green bonds investor portfolio with theoretical ESG investment model. Contrast, maybe beyond your expectation. And smaller, the investor are smaller, are not retail, more retail focused, and most of them are government linked with less participation from bank. And they prefer risky bonds from smaller issuers, resulting higher portfolio volatility and default. These investors are most likely to invest in firms with high carbon emission, but show potential for marginal environmental improvement. And implication and the future research can be done like that. Okay, so very, very interesting paper. We can pick this to end the story, because I have some comments, but before that, we can answer these questions. Care more about what? green investor, so special, so individual, so retail focused, so local. Green bonds investor care more about what? Okay, so our results are very consistent. Actually, they are hoping that they can improve the environment. They not care about the financial return, or otherwise they will not pick green bonds. And they are not just saying one grow. They care about whether they have a marginal improvement about those firms expected to have some results for the planet. Okay, so I have some comment, but you can have yours. One is the investor motivation framework. I think that should give some theoretical foundation from this paper, but I did not see that. And the data source can be more, provide more depth and more generalized data rather than just green bonds, small numbers from Norway. Okay, so we can apply this result to the other region if the data is more generalized. And sample size, I mentioned that very, very small sample, especially from the matching one, it reduced to 94 only. So if the small sample, we can use bootstrapping to validate the findings statistically. So this is one. A methodology matching process can be described more clearly to check the robustness. The other, like green bonds market dynamic, can be considered in the paper because I think that's the potential reason behind why the small portion of green bonds in portfolio. So there have some market mechanism or dynamic that can. And the other is a presentation. This paper using only in table. Actually, graphing and the DID differences in difference graph, parallel graph, many others vision graph can be added. That will be more interesting because we usually use our right side branch to look at the results. Okay, so, but overall, this is a very interesting paper, and I hope you learned something from today's presentation and lectures. Any other questions? Okay, and then policy implication, then we will go to the end of the lecture. Any other questions? Okay, and if no further questions, our lecture will end here. And if any other questions, you can just email it to me. Okay, and thank you very much for your participation in answering all the questions I gave to you. Okay, and I will end the class and let you go now.